Welcome to Just a Few More Minutes podcast, where three veterans of the animation and video game industry talk about exactly that, animation and video games. I am your host, Jeff Gabor, and right next to me is absolutely nobody.
You're by yourself this week.
I am, yeah. But we have you.
How does that make you feel?
Actually, it's quite cozy. I get the whole screen to myself. There's no one like making fun of my technical difficulties. It feels good. It feels real good.
Hey, you hear that, Mikey, you bastard?
Oh, believe me, he's jumping with joy right now if he hears this. Like he's like, yeah, fucking fine, do it yourself.
What, he doesn't like doing it anymore?
I just don't think he likes the drive. But see, he's a lot like me. I can relate to the idea that he doesn't want to do it, and he dreads it all day long or all week long. But as soon as you get doing it and the mics heat up, you love it.
Yeah.
And then when it's over, you feel good, and it's not until you realize you have an episode coming up in the next couple days that you start to dread it.
Yeah. That's cool.
But yeah, see, like right now, feels good.
It does feel good.
Did the homework, we know what we're talking about.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And we're ready to rock and roll.
No specific animation tip this week because this is going to be a very animation-centric podcast. So I'm going to say ahead of time, if you like the episode, make sure you tell somebody and see if we can tune some new people in, because I think this one will be a good one for animators to listen to. But since we're not doing that, let's start with some news, because we don't just talk animation, we talk video games too, right?
That is correct. So news. Really the only piece of news I want to talk about is it is August 22nd as of this recording. And the Super Nintendo Classic went into pre-order today.
Bullshit.
Or rather, very early today. At 1:30 a.m., in fact, was the first.
Why do they do this? I didn't even know. Did you know it was happening today?
No. And I signed up for the email notifications and everything. Like, I got no emails when I woke up this morning. I guess what happened was... Best Buy started at 1:30 in the morning last night, gone in minutes. Then it was Amazon at 5:30 in the morning, and that was gone in minutes. And then Target, gone. GameStop, gone. GameStop even had, like, their first round of pre-orders were reserved for in stores. You had to go to the store to pre-order it. And those were gone in minutes. I called my local GameStops, both of them, and asked them, and they're like, yeah, those were gone within 10 minutes.
Yeah.
You know. So, Nintendo, promising that they're going to make more product, I don't think will do a dent in the demand for this.
No, not whatsoever. It was funny. I was looking back at a retrospective of like at 2020 on Nintendo in 1985 or whatever. Mm-hmm. Same shit. It's the exact same shit.
Yeah.
People standing in line. Yeah. Waiting at every store they possibly can, waiting for Super Mario Brothers 2. Like, these guys are the kings of supply and demand.
Yeah. I can remember that fondly, actually, trying to find a copy of Super Mario Brothers 2.
Oh, yeah. I lost my shit. I found it at Sears. Yeah.
Oh, you just found it on a whim?
Yeah. I remember, like, I was going in, they had, like, signs everywhere, and I remember everybody was looking for it. And I was like, it's right there. And I picked it up. That was it. It was like, I didn't even have to try.
Wow, dude. I scoured my phone book. This was pre-internet, mind you. Scoured my phone book for every department store and toy store in the area. Called each one every day, just trying to get a copy of that shit.
It's weird looking back, right? Like, because like Super Mario Brothers 2 is the bastard child of all Marios, but at the time it was like on fire.
Yeah, it was. There was so much hype for it, and it's a totally different game.
Right.
You know, I guess the original Super Mario Brothers 2 is now called The Lost Levels. Was actually the official Super Mario Brothers 2, but they couldn't. But they figured that it was too difficult for the North American release.
Right.
So they took the game Doki Doki Panic and put Mario in it, basically. and that was Super Mario 2 for North America. And I played the Lost Levels years later, and I'm kind of glad they did that.
Yeah. I have no desire to play the actual legit Mario Brothers 2. Like, it does look like just a shit show.
Yeah, I mean, I remember dying immediately because I hit the block, got the mushroom comes out, and it killed me. So they had mushrooms that kill you as well as power you up.
Yeah.
So wrap your mind around that. Especially being programmed that mushrooms are good, you know?
So, you didn't get a Super NES then? Classic?
No, I did not.
I do know somebody that got one. Mr. Matt Simmons got one.
Yep.
Yeah.
He put it on Facebook today, and
Yeah.
I'm very happy for him. And his wife. His wife was the one who actually went and got it for him.
Right.
So.
Yeah. No. If I'm going to get it, I'm going to be forking over 3 times as much that everybody else is paying for it. So.
Yeah, I think I'm kind of falling that same category.
Yeah.
But that's it. I mean, there was no other news that really interested me these past couple weeks.
Yeah.
Unless you have something.
No, well, our game of the month is Sonic Mania, that we're encouraging everybody to play along with us, and then we'll do a review at the end of the month. But the news that happened is right before, we said, all right, we're going to make Sonic Mania the game of the month. It's all of a sudden they delayed the release for the PC, basically to the very end of the month.
Yeah, so I'm asked out because I got the PC version.
Yeah, so that sucks. Somewhat of a spoiler. I am fucking loving it.
Oh man, I can't wait. I
can't wait to review it because there's so much I feel bad for I feel like people that didn't grow up with it. I don't know. I'd be interested to see how they like it, but man, if you played 1, 2, and 3, and I played a shit ton of Sonic CD, man, they hit you right in the gut with all the nostalgia.
That's awesome.
It's
man,
cool.
I can't wait. I actually got the special edition package that came with the big statue.
Oh, really?
Yeah, it came with an actual life-size Sega Genesis module, and there's this 12-inch Sonic on the top.
Wow, that's pretty cool.
He's just standing there like this.
No, I didn't even know that was a thing, but that's pretty cool.
Yep.
All right, well,
let's move on.
I know. Well, I know Xbox did their Gamescom thing, but they didn't say basically anything new outside of what we already covered on E3. So, whatever.
That's kind of disappointing.
Yeah, there's nothing. They didn't announce any VR. Everybody's hoping Xbox will say some VR, but nothing. All right, Pete, one real quick. Name this game.
Mike Tyson's Punch-Out.
Oh, yeah. See, you can't be beat. You can't be beat. I do think anybody that's listening to this, challenge Pete Paquette on Twitter, and we'll get you in. We'll get you on the show and challenge him. See if you guys can name a tune faster than Pete Paquette.
Yeah, that would be fun.
All right. You ready to move on?
Yeah, let's do it, man.
All right, so this week, I think we're going to do a little bit something different. Obviously, we start each episode saying we're 3 veterans of the animation and video game industry, but exactly how are we those people? So this week we're going to talk about Pete Paquette.
Who are we?
Yeah, and who are you?
Who am I?
Yeah,
I'm nobody.
So I want to go through some of your work, but. Can you tell us just a little bit because I think one thing that's interesting to look back on your career specifically, you can paint it positive or negative depending on how you want to look at any one part of your career, but I feel overall it's a story of a lot of perseverance and you working really hard to get where you are, and that's a story that I feel a lot of students should hear of, because you didn't jump straight into I want to be an animator out of high school, right?
No, not really.
So, where did, tell that part, where did you go out of high school, and how did you find your way to animation?
Well, when I was in high school, I used to, I knew I liked to draw and stuff, and I was, drawing back and forth with my friend Samchai a lot. And we really, spent time like, perfecting each other's drawings. We even made the comic book at one point. And so I always knew that art was a big part of my life. However, I didn't realize I could make it a job until, again, my friend Samchai told me about, Disney animators and, how impressed he was with them and how, they're just regular people who are really, really good at what they do. And so we both decided to take art as a career. And specifically with animation as like the focal point. When I got out of high school, I went to Ringling School of Art and Design for a semester. And I went as an illustration major. And I lived the whole college experience and lived it up a little too much. Came out of there with like a C+ or something after that first semester. Really, really, honestly, it wasn't a waste of my time because in the long run it helped me out. But I needed to do. I felt like that was something I needed to do at that time in my life. So and then it came to a breaking point where I couldn't afford to go to school anymore. This was after, coming up on the fall of 1996, and they're like, "Well, you gotta pay for your next semester," and I was broke, and I made the difficult decision to just give up.
That's
and
right.
Not give up in such a way of like giving up entirely, but basically giving up on me being at that specific school. And so I went home and I was like extremely depressed and everything like that. And then my friend asked me one weekend to drive his car down to Florida. And I remember driving his car down to Florida and taking a bus trip back. And on that bus trip, I met a bunch of Marines who just graduated from Paris Island and were going home on leave. And I drank with them, had a great time, and realized by the end of that bus trip that was my next step. I needed a major change in my life at that point, and I needed discipline. So I joined the Marines.
See, that's crazy that you went to Ringling, you went to illustration, completely left, then joined the military. Yeah.
Not a traditional path by any means.
So then, how long were you in the military for?
4 years.
So then, how old are you now? You get out of the military, and then where do you go from there? And how old are you then? I guess you must be like 23 or something, right?
Yeah, I was like 23, and I remember I wanted to pursue animation at that point in my life. And to this day, I hold this creed to myself that no one can tell me I can't do anything.
You're like John Locke from Lost.
I never saw Lost. Sorry.
All right. Well,
Jeff's face just dropped.
Well, his whole thing is that he gets upset when people tell him they can't do it because he's handicapped, right? So he can't move his legs, so he wants to go on this like spiritual conquest, like adventure thing, but he's in a wheelchair type of thing. So don't tell me what I can't do. He tells everybody. That's you, man. That's you, Pete.
Ah, man. You flatter me.
Hey, man, he was my favorite character on that show. He was great.
Cool. So, yeah, that's my not so roundabout way of how I kind of got through some shit to get back to where I was to begin with, actually.
Well, it paid off. I went to SIGGRAPH in 2003 and went to the Electronics Theater, and I still very clearly remember watching your short.
That's awesome.
And that was like the holy grail. If you got into the electronic theater.
I'll never forget that either. That was huge. We at Ringling, part of to pass our computer animation class in senior year, we had to submit to SIGGRAPH, and we had to submit to SIGGRAPH as a work in progress. And so I sent them this piece of shit basically at the time, because I didn't really like it all that much at the time. It didn't really start coming together for me until like the last 6 months of the film. Hi, Deb. And and so where was I going with this? Oh yeah. So when I found out, I was very surprised. I was in the computer labs all the time. So it was like the morning, really nice sunny morning. I get an email saying, you were in electronic theater. And it's like, what? Like I couldn't believe it. And it was something that like, I'll never forget that.
I tried to get into the electronic theater that year. Mm-hmm. Did you have to do all the extra stuff where you had to like create like a special image for your thing, like a thumbnail, like
yeah,
you had to do all this extra special stuff that nobody ever really saw, but you had to like, it was crazy. It took a lot of work just to be submitted in the electronic theater.
Yeah, it definitely did. I think that's why they made it part of our curriculum down there.
Well, we're going to continue, but we have another person to ask questions with you, Pete. Deb Gabor is here.
Hello.
Hello.
Hello. How's it going?
Good to see you.
Yeah, you too. Trying not to bang on this table so much.
That's okay. Just get right up on there.
All right. Hello. Can you hear me better now, Pete?
So we're walking through Pete's career. So he went to Ringling for a semester, dropped out because he couldn't pay for it anymore. Went into the military for 4 years, then went back into knowing he wanted to be an animator. Went to and finished his animation program at Ringling, and then got accepted into the electronic theater at SIGGRAPH, which I was there and got to see that in 2003.
That's so weird because I don't know what student would submit to the electronic theater now. I mean, I guess maybe some do. But
yeah, I don't know what it's like now. Yeah,
it's more professional work, like studios kind of showing off, pieces of like what they did, or like we can use, what we did for a VES reel and submit that as, a minute clip or something. But it's like rare to see a student thing at the electronic theater.
Yeah, back then it was like both.
Yeah, it was both, yeah.
You had, my short alongside with like Lord of the Rings and stuff like that, which was crazy.
Yeah, I think the winner that year, if you remember, there was a short called Ryan. Do you remember that?
Yeah. It's the one with like the guy with the deformed face.
Yes. Yep.
Yeah.
Yeah. Man, that year is imprinted in my head. But okay.
Wait, this was 2003?
Three. Yeah.
I think my first SIGGRAPH was 2006. Oh. Boston.
Yeah. Oh, I was there.
Were you?
It was a good one to go to because it was in Boston.
It was. It was a good one.
All right, so now you're 2003. You don't jump straight to Blue Sky. If I can pull up something which I didn't know you worked on, can you talk about Hermie?
Oh, Jesus Christ! Literally. All right, so Hermie and Wormy. At the time, I just graduated, and at the time they needed help. The head of the Ringling animation department created a company and had a bunch of work for, looking for freelancers and stuff. So he asked me and a few other people, and we all jumped on board and did like storyboards and animation for him. And the output was basically this: Hermie and Wormy, which was a Christian television show for that featured Don Knotts as one of the voices, and who was the other guy? There was another guy that was like his counterpart.
Oh,
and,
I don't know.
Yeah, I forget his name. Anyway, but it's those two guys, and we made it and put it out, and then they actually did a part 2, which was like a year later.
Wow.
That I was involved with as well. It was, at the time, it was means to an end for the most part, because I just left Sony.
Oh, that was after Sony.
That was after Sony.
No shit.
That was just after Sony.
All right. Well,
So when we missed a part.
yeah.
now.
So clearly, yeah. Sorry, I must have skipped. I just assumed that was before Sony.
No, that was after Sony for a few months.
So you jumped out right out of school. You were picked up over at Sony.
Yep, I was hired at Sony ImageWorks to work on Polar Express at the time.
What was the job? Was it an animator job, or was it like a fixed animator? Or?
That remains to be seen. Basically, they hired me as an animator. When they told me I would be hired, they told me I'd be animating dogs and deer and all kinds of stuff. But in reality, when I got there, I was just doing mocap integration, which was fine. I just got out of school. I needed to pay my dues, but at the same time, it wasn't at all what they told me I'd be doing.
Yeah.
So it was a real bummer.
Did you know it was a mocap project going into it?
Yeah, and I voiced my concern about that during the interview, and they told me, "Oh, don't worry about it. You'll be on a team that just animates animals and stuff." Like, okay. So,
I do think it's part of, yeah, I do, like, obviously that you've let me know more, I don't know, more specific details of that, but I do think it's worth telling students that, sometimes that first job out of college or whatever, it doesn't necessarily work out, and you have to protect yourself in this industry as well. Like, you ended up having to jump through hoops at the end of your job at Sony.
Yeah, and I'm not going to go into details, but they basically made me at that time want to quit the industry. That's how badly it went. Yeah. Me leaving there. And I even said that to the head guy at the studio. He asked me, like, what are you going to do? And I'm like, I don't know. I just don't want to do this anymore. And
but you changed your mind when you had the opportunity to work on a Christian worm show.
Yeah. Maybe I needed a little Jesus in my life.
All right, so then what did you do after Hermie then?
After Hermie, I got an offer at Blue Sky.
Based on what reel?
Based on my thesis.
Okay, so the same short that got you at the Electronic Theater.
Right.
So at that time, you were only showing your short as your reel, or did you have a reel? Did you put together a reel?
No, I mean, I had a reel of like student things, but the bulk of it was the short. Because I mean, like, student work only goes so far, Back then, though, it was kind of a different story.
It was, yeah.
Mm-hmm. Student work went a lot further than it does now, I would say.
Yeah, I mean, back then there was only a handful of people that really knew the job, like knew 3D animation in general. It was less than 10 years old at the time, really. Like, so you're talking 2003 when you graduated Ringling, and that was only eight years after Toy Story.
That's crazy, man.
Yeah,
that's crazy.
So you very put it that way. It's real crazy.
Yeah, it's a very short time frame. And then I graduated the next following year, 2004.
As well as I.
Oh yeah, you did too. We should sometime get into how you got into industry too, because I think that's very interesting. How people actually find their way all the way around. Whether it's going to the military and then having to go to Sony and then doing some Christian Caterpillar stuff, and then finally you wound up at Blue Sky, and your first project was robots, right?
Yeah, it's a funny story how I got into Blue Sky, because I got an interview with Blue Sky while I was still at Sony, and I needed to fly an overnight flight because I couldn't be gone for very long. So I don't like to fly, so I was awake on the plane the whole time. I get to New York, it's like 9:30 in the morning. I haven't slept since the night before. I go on the interview, and they think I'm an asshole. Like, literally, I was told they thought I was an asshole through my friend. And my friend James Chang, who I owe my career to, honestly, I met him when I was on an internship with LucasArts back in school. And he took me under his wing and really guided me in my approach to animation and stuff. And while I was at Sony, he moved over to Blue Sky. So when he found out that they thought I was an asshole, he stood up for me and was like, no, he's a teddy bear. Bring him in, you'll like him, I promise, And the rest is history. But it's like, it's crazy. Like, your impressions on people is so important in this job, in this business, because there's, like, so few people that work in the business. So, like, you can have a really strong impression on one person, and it'll last forever.
Yep.
Yeah, good or bad.
Good or both.
Yeah. Yeah, I always say that everyone in this industry is connected by two people. Like, that's it. Like, the law of Kevin Bacon is just two.
Yeah.
In animation.
Most definitely. It's very small.
Yeah.
So now I wanted to, like, go through some of your work specifically and talk about a couple of, like, just outstanding, like, memories or either things that really, like, shine about these projects. Like, do you have a specific memory of working on robots? Like, that was with Chris Wedge. It's, I mean, outside of Polar Express, this is really your first movie you're getting to work on as an animator. Like, what stood out on that film?
I'll never forget. There's a lot of things. I started as a background animator, doing background stuff and, like, garbage, on conveyor belts.
Yeah, literally garbage.
Yeah, literally. And like, little background loops and stuff. And then one day they didn't have enough people on one specific shot, so I offered up to do it. And it had characters no longer in the background, but, like, focal characters, like, not they don't necessarily have lines, but they took up a lot of screen real estate and stuff. So I said I'd do it, and I did it, and they were really happy with it. And then they kept, like, increasing the amount of that kind of animation for me as it went on. And then I remember finally getting my first dialogue shot, which was like this. It was actually a pretty big one. And I remember just, this is my chance. I gotta, like, knock this out of the park. And I did. And at the end of that sweatbox, Chris Wedge had everybody give me a round of applause.
That's pretty cool.
And sent me an email afterwards saying he was really happy to see me grow as an animator while I was there and stuff.
Do you remember how big the animation team was?
I want to say about 30 people. It was small.
That's really cool.
Mm-hmm.
I think I was 36, so if I remember correctly.
Huh.
But that was the one thing that I'll never forget about that show, for sure.
And then the next movie was Ice Age 2. And I joined you on that one. When I came in, like, you seemed like you were a veteran all-star at that point. So something must have happened with your confidence by then.
Your head just blew up.
That's funny, because I really wasn't. I was just riding off the high at the end of Robots.
Mm-hmm.
I wasn't at all a veteran all-star. That's funny. What made you think that when you saw me? What was it?
Yeah, I mean,
just my personality.
Yeah,
or?
you were getting the big shots. People seemed to really respect you. Even back then, you were already taking control of the people that were coming in on interviews. I knew you weren't a supervisor, but you seemed like that person that they trusted, and maybe it's your military background too. But whatever, you certainly had a sense of control over whether it was meetings or the crew. You were certainly already playing that role.
Wow, it's interesting to hear an outsider's perspective. So on the inside, I felt like this little kid, oh, Jesus Christ, what am I doing here? I'm so scared. It's only my second movie. I'm going to get fired.
No, but do you have any memories of Ice Age 2? Because I feel like that was one of your best shows. You had a great show.
Thank you. Ice Age 2, let's see. I remember Carlos said that Carlos came up to me and said, somebody saw my scratch shot during the trailer and really liked it, and I forget who he said it was, but he was like, that's Pete Paquette. I was like, damn, thanks, Carlos. But,
was that a shot that was in the Piranha sequence?
It was the luge shot where he's getting ready in the luge and stuff.
Yeah, where he was prepping, right? To go down, and he's 1, 2, 1, 2, and then went off.
Yeah.
Yeah, I remember that shot pretty good.
That was a fun.
Wasn't that
was a
Nick's
fun shot.
first shot when he just flies through the air?
That was mine.
Oh, that was yours.
That was my first scratch shot. Was just after that, where it was 3 seconds of a little dot flying towards the camera, which today would probably take me 45 minutes. You pose it and you move it through space. That took me 4 days. I sweated. I shot reference. And then
What did you even shoot reference of?
me holding a pillow. Yeah. But then comparing that to the shot right before where Pete does this whole thing where he's getting ready to do a luge and he's putting his head down and this guy looks totally cool and he's going back and forth and back and forth and this whole acting thing, man, I was so intimidated. But yeah, it just goes to show you were obviously seen as really competent animator already back then. So it only took one movie and you were there.
Okay, that's cool. I mean, I've been told that I was the golden boy on that show, which is that's cool. I just feel bad when I kind of put myself in that situation in my mind because nobody really likes the golden boy.
I don't know. I think we all liked you then, but that token, it does happen. Every movie has its all-star.
Yeah.
And it's never the same person twice, but yeah, you were definitely it on that movie.
Yep.
And then there was a huge gap after that from Ice Age 2 to Horton.
Yeah, there was. We did. What did we do? Did we do No Time for Nuts before or after Ice Age 2?
Right after. Same time as half the crew was working on a short for Leaf Men.
That's right.
Like a pitch project for Leaf Men, and then the other half of the crew was working on No Time for Nuts, which was a scrap-based short.
Oh, let's turn back the dial a little bit because I remember in between Robots and Ice Age 2, I actually worked on the Peanuts short.
Oh, you worked on that? I didn't know you worked on that.
Yeah, I was one of the guys who did the Peanuts pitch or whatever it was at the time.
Yeah, it's sort of like a proof of concept type thing.
Yeah.
Like we were pitching. I wasn't at the company yet, but I saw it eventually. But yeah, we pitched something, to try to bid for Peanuts way back in 2005.
Yep.
And it was Woodstock and Snoopy on ice, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, and it, trust me, it didn't look nearly as good as what you guys ended up doing. But
yeah, whatever's in your head, it's 10 times worse. I saw it about a year and a half ago, and there was no wonder why that whole project was put on ice for a while.
Yeah, it's definitely it definitely wasn't great. But the same token, it helped kind of start that relationship that ended up moving you guys forward with the movie and stuff.
Did you work on the pitch for Horton or the bid for Horton?
I was going to, and then I never did. Wait a minute.
Man.
That's not true. I did something. I remember Jimmy bringing us in and being like, "Hey man, we totally need this. We need this animation where the, Horton does this or climbs a ladder or some shit." And I remember I think I did something with Horton climbing a tree or something. I forget exactly, but
well, I think the original one, the one that I'm thinking about, this is the one before. I think even Jimmy maybe was at the studio. Maybe I'm wrong about this, but it was just him getting out of the pool. That was it.
Oh, maybe I didn't work on that.
Like, I think he saw the little speck go by, and then he walked out of the pool and shook his leg a little bit. And that was they used that to bid against, I think, Sony for the project. Wow. And I think Blue Sky won it based on their pitch over Sony's pitch. And I think I'm one of the very few people in the world that saw Sony's pitch. Good reason why.
You saw it.
I did see it. Theirs was spot on, looked like the book.
Oh wow!
Which was not good. All
That's
those
weird.
wrinkles on the nose.
Yeah.
It didn't look great. It did not look right in animation. It was very weird looking. Anyways, back to what's your main memory from No Time for Nuts?
Well, I animated the shot where I animated a chunk of shots where Scrat was going through all these different scenarios, and ultimately ended up in front of the statue of David, and he's placed precariously, in such a way that where it looks like the statue's dick and balls, and so Thermi at the time, he was like, "All right, I totally wanted to give you this shot," because he's like, "This is totally your thing." So I was like, "All right," and I just totally went for it. And at the time, I had him punch the time machine. Or first, he looks up and he's like, he does this little ting thing sound, and I had his nose literally droop and swing,
get flaccid. Yeah, I remember that take on it.
And Thermi goes over. He's like, "Yeah, I really like it, but the higher ups didn't like it very much." So, but there's still a tiny little bit of it in there. If you watch right at that moment, you can see that it kind of drooped down just a little bit.
I was so jealous of your shots, because you got that entire chunk. Soon as he starts flying through time, really rapid fashion, those were all yours.
Yep.
It was you got the sweetest part of that entire short.
Yeah, I definitely agree. I was very fortunate. And it was a lot of fun too, because it's kind of like putting them in all these stressful situations, and I love stressing characters out in animation. I love to make them feel like. Do you know what I'm saying?
Yeah, absolutely. Scrat's the best one because he's funnier and funnier the more stressed out or painful situation you put him in.
Yeah.
I feel like that was always what made the audience laugh. You could do these heady jokes at the end of Ice Age 3 where he's got his love interest. Mm-hmm. But I feel like that never played as much as just smacking him really hard.
Yeah, he's definitely one of those things where the slapstick needs to be there, Yeah. But yeah, that was a cool project to work on, and it was nominated for an Oscar.
Yeah, you're right.
Yep.
Yeah, I can't remember what short beat it, but I'm sure it was some Pixar-related something. But yeah, so then we had a huge gap in between Ice Age 2 and Horton, where we spent a year in pre-production as an entire team in pre-production.
Yeah.
And trying to come up with an animation style.
And that's where
for Horton, yeah.
And that's where you began to shine.
yeah, that's where I started like trying to take on what you guys were teaching, in terms of like, because you guys were starting to develop this whole style of like how to animate the eyes cartoony and starting to like break things and like doing the squash and stretch and all this, and I was just trying to keep up with you guys.
That was basically Nick, dude. I can't take any credit on any of that shit. Nick was
Yeah.
Nick like owned that, you know? He totally nailed exactly what they were looking for, you know?
Right.
And
They did
developed it.
Yeah, I think it doesn't get said enough how much respect was built in that pre-production. That year pre-production, an entire language got broken down for Horton, which is really great. How to pose it, how to pose the fingers, how to pose their faces. What did it really look like to make a who look like a who? It was pretty awesome.
Yeah, and it was that's something that I always look back fondly on. I whenever somebody says what was your favorite movie to work on and what was your least favorite movie to work on, I always say Horton. I'm like, okay, well, what was your least? I say Horton.
Yeah.
And they're like, why? Well, I said because the animation was so much fun, and the team was so much fun, but the production schedule was insane.
It was brutal.
You know?
Well, maybe I should have spent so much time in pre-production.
Yeah, well, they kept rewriting it. One, we couldn't get the rigs made because it's just like if you're thinking about the timeline, 1995 is Toy Story. Like eventually you get up to 2001, 2002, sorry, with like Ice Age and Monsters Incorporated around there. But you're not like there's nothing really slapsticky outside of Scrat. Nobody is doing squash and stretch yet in 3D animation, like period. It doesn't even exist yet.
Yeah.
So like you take it for granted, like arms can bend and like get bendo and like rubber hosey and all that now, but until then nothing had been made. So in between Ice Age 2 and Ice Age and Horton, we were developing an entire new language for 3D animation. Like how do you make something really squash and stretch? How do you make an arm do a loop-de-loop shape and then be able to articulate just like a regular arm? So that's why that pre-production ended up being so long, because we had no idea how to make these eyes squash and stretch. We developed like putting lattices in the eyes and lattices in this and that and animating vertices and blah 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 blah. Like it was a whole new language that everybody had to keep up with. Like that was a year of growth for I think the entire team, because it was small.
Yeah.
Like you said, it was only 35 people.
Yeah.
So tiny.
Yeah.
Compared to nowadays.
It was like a renaissance, man.
Yeah.
You know, for the studio, I think. But
do you have any outstanding memory during the production
of Horton?
Yeah.
All I can remember is well, that's not all I remember, but I used to commute with Nick because I bought my house up near where he was living. So I would commute in with Nick, and we would get up at 5 in the morning. I'd meet at his house, and we'd come down. And we'd always be there for the opening of the Opie and Anthony show. We'd always be in the car. And they would... Yeah. And they'd play that song from The Good, the Bad, and the Ugly that was in the Horton reel to begin with.
Yeah.
You know, during the whole chase scene. And, I don't know, I just remember, like, I have fond memories of commuting with that guy. So.
Yeah. Yeah, I still, you would always get in so early, and I was an early bird, too. And until 7 o'clock in the morning, it was the Paquette radio show. So you'd turn up the radio, and everybody would listen to your music until 7 o'clock, which 7 o'clock is, or maybe it was 8.
Yeah,
maybe it was till 8. And then you had to turn the radio off because other people started showing up, but you DJ'd until then. And it was everything from the 80s music to just listening to NES 8-bit theme songs.
Yeah, it's definitely the Pete playlist, the Pete morning show. I remember that.
Yeah, it was pretty good.
Good times, man.
And then you jumped onto Ice Age 3. And
Yeah,
I think
fun.
by then you were a senior animator at Blue Sky.
Yep. However, I don't remember much from Ice Age 3 during that
Isn't
time.
that funny? Like, I feel like I have the same thing. Like, I can start to like if once people start like jogging my memory of Ice Age 3, but compared to the drama of Horton Ice Age 3, just kind of it just happened.
What year did it come out?
2009.
Was it 2009?
Yeah.
Yeah.
But let me jog your memory a little bit. You on Ice Age 3 were in charge of the temps. This is the group of like Nathan Englehart, Andrew Coates, Adam Green.
Guys who went on to be amazing animators and filmmakers.
Yeah, I mean all of these guys, some of them supervisors, directors now, and they were all coming in as just temp animators, and you had to straighten them up.
Oh my god. Ah, God, yeah. I remember I was in charge of 30 people. And I also had to produce shots.
What were you doing in being in charge of them? Were you in charge of their, like, double checking their shots? Like, what did it mean to be in charge of the temps?
Well, I made a whole school, basically, or startup for people showing up.
The Blue Sky Institute. It's still around.
I've heard.
Yeah.
You still use it?
It's in a different form. Like, we've tried to update it, but still the core of it's named Blue Sky Institute, and the new temps or new animators that show up still use it. Yeah, the core of that idea is still there.
That's cool. Yeah, I developed that and made everything like online, so you could go through videos online and everything, and basically cut down on the one-to-one, one animator to one temp.
So less human
sort of
interaction.
relationship.
Right. Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
And so it was me, and I would go around to everybody and check their shots, because each person had like an assignment, so they could learn how to use the rigs, and you know, I'd basically go around and supervise them, and I did that for a bunch of people, and it was very stressful. That's what I remember from that show. Maybe that's why I blocked it out, because I remember just trying to make everything work. And
I still remember one guy quit after like a week and a half. Like he came from, I think, Industrial Light and Magic, and he was doing motion capture.
Oh,
And-
that's the guy. That's the guy who looked like the lead singer of Creed.
Yeah, that's him.
Yeah, okay.
And I remember him stressing, like, after going to lunch, and I was like, dude, it's going to be all right. It's going to be fine, man. You just get through it. Just buckle down. He's like, nah, I'm going to quit. He did. He quit. I never saw him again. I have no idea who he was. But he was like, I don't even know why they hired me. I just did motion capture. And I mean, I was doing the motion capture. Like, I was in a suit. Well, I'm sorry, bud.
Talk about accidental hires.
Yeah.
Wow.
So he had no idea what was going on. So he was like, nah, I don't know how to lay down a keyframe.
That's a funny story.
Yeah.
Oh man.
What was after that?
After Ice Age was Rio, right?
Oh,
Ice Age
yeah.
3
Yeah,
was
jump
Rio.
straight to Rio.
Rio was cool. I remember noticing there was a bulldog in the midst of the characters, and I went to Carlos. I said, Carlos, can I please be the lead on the bulldog? And he's like, oh yeah, sure. Why? I said, where do I start? I played football for the Bulldogs. I joined the Marine Corps. My call sign was the Bulldog. And like, what I said, I really need, and I showed him my arm. I got a tattoo of a bulldog on my arm. And he's like, oh, yeah, totally. You know? And so that was really cool.
Who was animation soup on that show?
Gallon.
Yeah. And JP, it was me and JP Sands, or Juan Pablo Sands, and he helped me develop the dog, and he did a really, really, really awesome job. He came up with some really cool shit for that dog, and we went with it with a lot of what he did. So, if you're listening, JP, you're awesome.
He's souping over at DreamWorks now.
Is he?
Yeah. Pretty crazy. Cool. Yeah. You got to work on your Tracy Morgan impression too, because the dog was played by Tracy Morgan.
Yeah. The Tracy Morgan. Yeah. I actually got to meet him at the recording.
What? I didn't know that.
You didn't know that? Yeah.
No.
Carlos was like, I remember Carlos came by and he said something about the recording. And I said, "Can I go?" He's like, "Yeah, sure." So he let me go with it was me and Gallon and a couple other people, producers, etc. And got to see him do his thing in the sound booth. Super funny guy. Super funny guy, but super vulgar. He's like how he is on 30 Rock, only like X-rated, which is wonderful for me because I thought he was funny enough on 30 Rock, but then meeting him in person was hilarious. But yeah, that was cool.
You had a pretty good show on that with the dog, and you had plenty of other animation that you did, and even I think that was really when you started developing the use of sketch at Blue Sky to really do sketch passes for our work.
Yeah. Well, it's funny because the whole idea of doing 2D passes I was doing on Horton, but I had no way of doing so without plastic animation paper, which totally sucked.
Right.
But I did it, and I would show Jimmy stuff, and he would like it. But I never really latched onto it because the software was so shitty. And so, like, we went to who did we go to? We went to Carl, and we asked him, like if we could get software for it, because there was a bunch of people interested, and Pimp Kane was one of them, Scott Carroll. And Carl's like, well, why don't we just develop our own? And I was like, oh, that's awesome. That's an awesome idea. So we started developing Sketch, and Pimp Kane ultimately took the helm on it. But I was there to help him get it going and testing it along the way. I don't know if it still works this way, but I even asked for WASD on the for control on the during the time slider, and it was still there last I knew.
I think it's still there, yeah.
So that was a cool experience, and that was when it took that long. It was oops, you guys froze.
Oh, just wait a second.
Hopefully
wait for it to come back.
You can still hear me.
Oh, you're there.
Hello.
You're there.
Yeah. It took a while for them to really develop it and perfect it, but around Rio was when it started to show its face, and really a lot of people started using it, and I love doing that. I still do that to this day. I do sketch passes, only not in Sketch anymore, obviously, but I use Flipbook Pro. So, you okay?
Yeah, sorry. I'm hearing a hum, so I'm hoping that isn't coming through, but it's all right. It's all right.
I'm not hearing anything.
All right, cool. Did your air conditioning just come on, Pete?
No.
No? Okay. Well, I don't know. Screw it.
don't
It's
hear
just me
anything.
being nuts again.
Yeah.
All right.
Yeah. So the Rio was really cool, and I really enjoyed animating on it. I went through a bout of depression just beforehand, and I almost quit Blue Sky.
Is that right around the time you also were thinking about like even like story stuff, that kind of
No,
thing?
that was actually later.
Okay.
This was before Rio even really got started.
Okay.
It was like at the very beginning, the first few sequences were in. And yeah, dude, I almost left, and I was glad I stuck around because it was a lot of fun to animate on. But
Yeah, I feel like that was right when I don't know if it was before or after that part, but we started doing the Treehouse episodes together.
yeah, yeah, the Treehouse was awesome. The Treehouse episodes are so much fun. For those of you who don't know, and Jeff alludes to it all the time, we made these. I remember we were still in White Plains, in the basement,
Yeah.
and we saw this ad for the Muppet Whatnots, and Muppet Whatnots were basically what Jim Henson would call extras in a shot in any of his shows or anything. And basically it was like, detachable parts that, like a Mr. Potato Head, only with a puppet. And they started making them available for sale. And I can't remember exactly. I showed the guys, and then like somebody was like, "Let's all get them." Yeah, let's do a show. Okay, let's, and we started making this stupid show based on like the cliches of animation production.
Yeah, and it went through Ice Age 3, through Rio, and into Ice Age 4.
Yeah, it went for a pretty good long time.
Yeah.
We never got any views though.
Nah. Nah.
I think it was really before like social media took off the way it
Yep.
is.
Probably so.
I mean,
I'll attest to that. Yeah, that sounds good.
There wasn't Facebook when we were doing it.
Yeah.
There
Well,
was MySpace, and then maybe a handful of us were on Facebook, but it wasn't like all your friends were on it yet. Maybe by the end.
Facebook came out in like 2005. 2006 at the latest.
Don't shit on my point. I'm just saying.
But you wouldn't have you wouldn't have shared videos like that back then. I don't even know if it had video sharing capability back then.
Yeah, I mean, it's
very
definitely
true.
not what
I
it
mean,
was today.
Yeah,
for sure.
it's not. It's definitely like. It was definitely different for sure.
Yeah.
So maybe that's why it didn't go viral. Either that or it just was terrible.
So then, what was the what was the
It was
major
terrible.
hump? What was the major hump to get out of that first depression there?
Well, it took a lot of. Actually, Gallon was the one who kind of slapped me out of it. He had a meeting with me one day, and he's like, "What the hell is going on with you? Like, why do you like? You don't want to work on it? Like, because I remember him being like, "Hey, dude, what shots do you want to work on?" And I replied to him, "None of them."
So sad.
And he's like, "What the hell's going on?" And I told him everything, and we had a heart to heart, and I came out of it feeling like, okay, somebody does give a shit, so I think I'm gonna perfect, go further with my animation. I want to continue to impress people and have fun, and I don't care about numbers. I don't care about, you know what I mean? I let a lot of things that were bothering me go, as far as like production expectations. That was just unnecessary stress, and it brought me down. And I realized that in the end, it really, all that matters really is your animation.
Right.
All that other shit doesn't matter at all. So it's like, that's what my focus is going to be from now on. It's just that and nothing else. And yeah, I was able to pull out of it and have a great show. It was a lot of fun, you know.
Yeah, and then right after that, Ice Age 4 started to kick in, and that was right.
As I started. Right as I started.
Yeah, right as you started, Ice Age 4 was heating up, and Pete you were just getting going, just enough to say you weren't going to finish the show.
I mean,
Yeah.
you were hardly on the show. Like, I started and you left like 3 days later.
Yeah, I did like 4 shots on the movie or something like that. So it was a mixture of a bunch of different things. One was that my kids were starting school soon, and I wanted to bring them back home and, you know, put them in school here in Massachusetts. The other thing was that I felt I needed to shake things up because I'm starting to feel complacent in my approach to animating and how you know, I would take things for granted, and I wanted to shake things up and get out of my comfort zone. And boy, did I ever do that. Holy shit. But it's just like, it was nothing against Blue Sky or the people or anything. It was just something I needed to do.
I will share just a quick memory from Ice Age 4 of you. 2 of them. One, just a real quick one. For some reason, they put you on a test shot to try to figure out how the heck Sid would wring out his belly, like a rag. And they're like, just try to model the belly so it looks like he can grab it like a rag and twist it. You made it look just like he grabbed and formed a penis out of his belly and started squeezing it. I was like, what are you doing?
They're like, maybe you should do it out to the side. Try one to the side. I'm like,
All right, and then
all right.
Then memory number 2, you did one of the most amazing shots in 3D animation, period, is the zoetrope feel of Scrat's eyes rotating around the core of the Earth. It's like the opening sequence to Ice Age 4. You can see his eyes do this zoetrope as he's spinning around. Fucking awesome. If you step through that, it's like brilliant.
Thanks, man.
And then number 3 is the prank we played on you where you were going for final on your shot, and we overwrote the master audio file. So when you opened it up and checked your animation when you came in the morning, it was it was the same line but a different take that we had taken from Dennis Leary. We took it from another shot in the movie, but it made it seem like it was they just changed the line on you. And we recorded it.
That lives somewhere.
It does, but your reaction was just like, that figures. All right. Like,
So disappointing.
Yeah,
for
we
those
thought you were
wanting to
gonna.
prank.
Yeah, we thought you were gonna throw shit and get all angry, but you were just like, it happens. Well, that isn't very funny.
Yeah, I remember all those instances. The Zoetrope thing was an interesting thing because Nick actually assigned it to me, and I was worried because it was a super technical shot, and but part of me was like the big part of me was like, I do not want to let Nick down, you know, so.
Was that his first supervising gig?
Yep.
Yeah, and I really slugged through it because he trusted me with it. I didn't want to let him down, so Well,
I encourage people to look it up. It's as easy as just looking up the Ice Age. What did they call that short? It was like
Continental Drift.
I mean, that was the name of the movie, but
movie.
it was like Continental Crack Up or something like that.
Oh yeah.
They
It was
they
something like that.
they pawned it off as like a short. I don't know why they did that, but yeah, I do know why they did it. They did it so if they called it a short, then they could attach it to the beginning of a movie without it actually having to be a teaser. Because then if it's an actual trailer, then the actual individual theaters they have the choice to cut it. But if it's an animated short that goes with it, they don't have the option. They have to keep it attached to the movie.
Smart marketing.
Yeah. So that's why they changed it to a Continental Crack-Up, I think it was called. Either way, you did end the show with a bang with a couple really great shots before you ended up leaving the studio, and we finished up the Treehouse episodes, and then you went up north to chase the Boston Red Sox or something, right? What was that?
Well, former Boston Red Sox pitcher Curt Schilling started a video game company in Providence, and I went and saw the game, played the game, and wanted to be a part of it. And I wanted to get into games. I remember that was a big thing, was that I started in games at LucasArts years back, and I really had a good time, and I remember that fondly. So I wanted to get back into games to see if like that intrigue was still there,
Mm-hmm.
And I went there, and it was great, and everybody there was awesome. Made some good friends there. People I'm still friends with, of course. And one day I was walking up to, or I was driving into work, and I get a text from my friend saying, "Hey, why is 38 Studios on the news?" And around here, it wasn't a big deal because they were always on the news around here. And then I was like, "Oh, whatever." I didn't answer the text. I parked my car. Next text I get is, "Why is 38 Studios bankrupt?" I'm like, "What the hell?" And then I walked up to the front door, and there was a news crew there being like, "Do you know of a conspiracy of like something or a conspiracy?" And I'm like, I just fucking work here. I don't know anything. And so I went in, and there were news cars all around the studio because it was big news around here because the company actually borrowed money from the state to invest in the game. And so then they bring us into this room, into the boardroom, and they're like, "Look, we can't pay you guys. Do what you got to do. But we want you to stick together and help each other out and stuff like that." And so I called my friend Sean Robertson from Irrational Games, like immediately. Told him what was going on. He's like, "Yeah, let's set up an interview." And the following week I had an interview with him and went well, and I ended up at Irrational for good amount of time, 2.5 years, I think.
What were the titles you worked on that?
BioShock Infinite and Burial at Sea, the DLC. So, and that was really cool too. It was Elizabeth was a character in the game, your kind of like companion character, and she was like a Disney princess. She was a lot of fun to animate, and the cool thing, it was motion capture, but the cool thing about it was I used it to my advantage. I actually would break the motion capture. I would actually bake the motion capture down to 2s and just start deleting shit and retiming everything so it felt nice and poppy and everything.
Is this where your experience from Sony's motion capture time came back into your career?
No, I didn't learn shit at Sony.
I was hoping there was like a nice like round circle there.
There was no circle whatsoever because the way they did it was like it was in its infancy at the time, kinda, and they used like what the hell is that? Motion Blender or something like that. There's some like Motion Builder. That's what it's called. They use Motion Builder, and Motion Builder is still being used to this day to integrate motion capture, but that was all I did was take rigs in Motion Builder and export them to Maya. or animations and motion builder and export them to Maya.
Ugh.
I didn't learn anything about about the process really.
I was hoping we would
that's
have a good
unfortunate.
story there. Lessons
I know,
learned.
right?
You never know when you learn in your first job that you may have hated.
No.
I know.
But no,
right?
no, never mind. Not at all.
I'm not telling a good story. I'm sorry.
It's all right. Continue.
But you did
So, yeah.
you did a great job on that character, Elizabeth. It was really
Yeah,
good.
she was. Thank you. She's a lot of fun, and a real sweet character to animate too. You know, and then they disbanded after releasing the DLC for BioShock Infinite. They disbanded, and I decided that I was gonna maybe go back to Blue Sky. It was literally, my house was on the market. I was selling my house to go back to Blue Sky. In the meantime, I just started taking on contracts and doing freelance work, which proved to be extremely fruitful. So after some time, I decided that I would make a go of it and really, do my best at doing freelance work. And then I got a contract one time working for a company called Zero Effects in Boston, and they wanted me to do a whooping crane animation for Mall Cop 2.
Oh,
And,
yeah. Mhm.
And yes, Mall Cop 2's on my resume.
Paul Blart, baby.
Yeah.
I never knew
so,
that.
So I did some animation on that, and then they were happy with it, and they're like, "Hey, you know what? You want to be like, we've never had an animator before. You want to be an animator for us and be like a staff guy?" I was like, "Shit, yeah!" So I worked there for about a year and a half as like a lead animator on different films and whatnot, and then ultimately it came down to like, "Hey Pete, can you come with me?" Go sit down in the office. 2 CEOs are there. "I'm sorry, we're gonna have to. We no longer need a lead animator at the studio." All right. It's like,
Was that right as you were working on Ghostbusters?
that was right at the beginning of it.
Yeah.
So like right at the beginning of it, working on that. But it was fine. I remember at first I was scared. I didn't know what I was gonna do, and I was like, you know what, I'm gonna just go back to contracting for a little while. And then Hasbro called me, and they're like, "Hey, you wanna come help us with something?" So I was like, "All right, cool." So then they hired me, and then they let me go. Because they're like, "Oh, we don't need a guy with your skills. You're too what do they say? You're too pinpointed for us." I'm like, "All right, fuck you." And then Robin Lynn called me or texted me. Was like, "Why don't you come work for Riot?" Like, I can do that. Like, I'm not gonna move out there. I can't. And they're like, "No, it's freelance. I was like, "Okay, cool." So I did that for about a year. And then that recently the contract ended. It was crazy. All during this time, I actually managed to do Freebirds and Book of Life as well.
Oh yeah. You were
During that.
freelancing for Real Effects for a couple of those movies.
Yeah.
So in a span of 5-6 years over at Blue Sky, you worked on 3-4 films, but then you went from working on BioShock and Kurt Schilling's game, and then working on games over at Riot, and then working on Freebirds, and then working on Book of Life. You were cranking through different projects. It's pretty cool.
Yeah. It was an interesting experience too, because you get a really unique perspective when you're working on both things at once. You know, like while I was working on BioShock, I was working on Freebirds, and Book of Life, I was working on TV, like a television commercial or something like that, if I remember correctly. But it's cool to kind of have that perspective. So you could, you know, it makes you appreciate different aspects of different things for sure. You know, the trick is trying to come up with something that takes the best of both worlds and, you know, makes it make the perfect situation.
Well, it's an entirely different skill set in terms of like what even the producers are asking for in terms of like how much footage you're supposed to produce a week and the entertainment level and the whether you're doing squash and stretch or you're keeping things as like if you're doing effects, like the whole point is it's supposed to look as photoreal as possible. But then if you're jumping onto Freebirds, you know, they're looking for as cartoony and as entertainment as possible in terms of the movement. So it's an entirely different skill set that you're bringing from hour to hour to your job.
It's like shaking your brain around.
Yeah.
Yeah, my brain feels shaken. Yeah, so it's been a wild ride. I can't
So are you
deny that.
freelancing now? What's the latest?
Latest, couple weeks ago, not a couple weeks ago, about a month ago, my contract with Riot ended, my contract with the EA ended, and actually it's Madden Day. Madden came out today.
Yep.
And I worked on Longshot for that while I was working at Riot as well. And now I'm working with Ryan Denniston at Blizzard. So, and that's been working on Overwatch, and that's been an absolute blast.
Overwatch is like one of the most popular. Probably is the most popular first-person shooter game right now. Absolutely. It's a great. I don't know. One of our guys in the animation department, Graham Silva, is absolutely obsessed with it. He plays nonstop Junkrat.
Yeah, I remember he told me he wanted to know who animated Junkrat so he could give him a hug or something.
Yeah.
So.
That's pretty awesome, man.
Yeah. Well, thanks for showcasing me.
No, I mean, I feel like there's a lot of good lessons in terms of your career, whether it's, you know, you starting at Ringling and having to bow out for a little bit to go into the military and then jumping back in and then getting your first gig over at Sony and it not necessarily or definitely not working out in terms of all the hoops you had to jump through. And then eventually finding your way to Blue Sky and climbing up the ladder of BG Animator to proving yourself and making yourself worthwhile to the company in Blue Sky. Because you stuck your nose into everything you possibly could to make yourself priceless. You know, there whether you were taking on temps or you were helping develop sketch or some of the animation style. And then, you know, even on the side of that, doing Treehouse stuff. Which was, I think, a morale booster for the crew as well. Mm-hmm. You know, I mean, I feel like there's so much stuff you can continue to like talk about what you brought to like extracurricular stuff at Blue Sky, but then still there, you know, taking a career and taking a complete right turn, and then all of a sudden going into video games for the next decade of your life. It's, you know, it's just. There's so much to learn in terms of like having ups and downs and questioning your skill set and then taking that and getting over that and taking that into a new job or new contract or a new way to make your money using the same skill set. I feel like it's something that students need to hear, that it's not always a straight line.
No, it's definitely not a straight line, and there's so many facets to what you can do with it. You know, I did Flash animation for 6 months. And I would have never thought that was applicable, and they had to teach me. You know, but at its core, it's all timing and what's the word I'm looking for? Appeal.
Right.
You know, so I mean, don't let software like make you scared about going into any different part of animation. Because it's all the same, really.
Since you're freelancing, you know, for the last however many years. How have you gotten connected to all of these companies, and what do you do to stay kind of relevant to them and make sure you're kind of on their call list?
Well, everything I've ever gotten through freelance was through people that I've worked with. Be it, somebody I went to school with. That's how I got the EA job. Somebody who hired me in the past, which was how I got the Riot job. Somebody who knew me, said I was a good guy and vouched for me, and that's how I got the Fablevision job. It really comes down to how you carry yourself and the people you meet, and that networking is definitely not one of those things where you're like, hey, here's my card. Networking is being a decent human being.
Quote, Pete Paquette.
Yeah. And just, it's like, it's kind of like that thing, like, when you die, how many people do you want to have visit your wake?
Jesus Christ.
All of those recruiters.
No, it's the same thing. You want to carry yourself in such a way to where people like you, like genuinely like you, and like, hey, you know what, that guy was cool, or hey, that guy was fun to work with, or you want to make a good impression all the time. That's not to say you won't make your occasional enemy or two, but you always want to be like just a good person and really invest your time in making friends and relationships that end up moving on to other things someday, so.
Yeah, well, stands to reason. There's plenty of people at Blue Sky that are still aching for you to eventually come back. So you still have a lot of people in your corner.
I'm flattered. Thank you. I'm thinking about maybe doing it next summer. Who knows?
Temp? You want a temp? Let me know. I know the right people to talk to.
Cool.
I mean, I feel like you have a fairly good in with the director, but yeah. Well, obviously your journey's not over yet, so we'll have to do another one of these and just catch up. And there's so many small details and stories in each one of those movies that we just glossed over, so we could go on for a lot longer. But I feel like this is a pretty good summation of your career thus far.
Yeah, and I want to make sure that we do this for you and Mikey too, because this was a cool idea.
Yeah, we can do that.
Sure.
And Deb.
Yeah. I'm not sure mine's as interesting, but at least I can help ask questions.
I mean, just as like a quick preview, I think it's interesting that, you went to Ithaca College and then...
Ithaca, what's up?
I mean, you didn't start at animation. You started in a talent agency.
I did. I hardly even knew what animation was. In fact, I got the job at Disney and was trying to figure out what the difference was between 2D and 3D animation at the time.
Yeah. So, like, people get into this industry in wildly different ways, and I feel like your story is pretty, like, it feels like if you were looking, if you pulled way back and looked in perspective, you could see that animation would fit you really well, but you weren't on that path to get there. It was just sort of, you were eventually, like, pulled in, like a gravitational pull into it.
Did I ever show you my animation reel from college?
No.
It's something. I probably would have fired myself like day one if I...
But this brings up an interesting point. We should consider having people, guests, and doing the same thing. Because, like, think about Mike Walling's story, for instance.
Oh, yeah. I mean, that one's all over left turn, right turn, just upside down.
Yeah.
It's just not a... I mean, just one part of his story, which it would be great to get him on the podcast. He took a job at the Disney store in the mall because he thought that would help.
Yeah.
Like, this kid did some weird things to get into this job.
That's really funny. But good for him.
It worked.
Yeah.
Like, I mean, I don't think that part of it did anything, but he tried everything he could.
And talk about like a super good guy, you know what I mean? Like,
Yeah.
he's somebody that you remember and you care about, you know? It's not like just somebody that you met. It's like, here's my card. You know what I mean? That's not networking.
Yeah, during all of Horton, I used to every morning get an orange juice. And I would take off the little plastic lid, and I couldn't see Walling, and he couldn't see me, but he was across the cubicles, and I would toss it in the air in hopes of hitting him in the head without looking. And then he would throw it back at me, and it would be random times in the day. And the whole point was like, you wanted to try to draw blood. You wanted to get him in the forehead and draw. But just about a week and a half ago, I took my iPhone out and recorded myself throwing a lid at my iPhone camera and sent it to him, and he sent me a video back of acting like he got smacked in the face.
That's funny.
That was it. Like, we didn't say anything. We didn't call each other and say hi. We just sent those videos back and forth to each other, and that was it. I haven't talked to him. So, yeah,
funny.
he's a good guy.
Yep.
That's such a guy thing to do.
Yeah.
Well, like the throwing a lid over a cube and hoping to get blood out of someone.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, we could do a whole episode on guy stuff we've done at Blue Sky.
Yeah.
Yeah, we'll save that one. But that's a wrap, Pete. That was good.
Thanks, man.
So this has been Just a Few More Minutes podcast. We're three veterans of the animation and video game industry. Talk about exactly that, animation and video games. Our game of the month is Sonic Mania, and we'll probably be reviewing it in the next 2 weeks. I think it will be the next episode, maybe our review. You'll only have played it for a few days, Pete, but we'll get your opinion on it. I think 5 days is enough to get in there. Hopefully you'll play through
Well,
it.
my buddy Samchai is coming up over the Labor Day weekend, and we plan on beating that shit. And he wants to give some feedback on it too.
All right, don't let him only let you be Tails, man. Don't do that.
Nah, hell no.
You gotta be Sonic.
Nah, definitely, and I'll record his thoughts on it too.
That'd be great. Let him know. He's definitely always welcome on the podcast. He's funny. He is funny as hell.
Yeah, he is.
Thanks for joining us, Deb.
Sure. Thanks for having
Thanks,
me.
Deb.
Glad Mackenzie went to
awesome.
bed.
Yeah,
I can hang out.
I need to get some bed. I'm sick and I have a broken back. So,
It's true. He's a disaster.
all right, everybody, hit that funny music, Pete.
All right, you got it.